Hello friends, for today's video, I'm going to be going through reading, writing, and channel related things. And I'm going to start with the channel as I think this is the most applicable to all of you. And then really quick segue into some things related to writing. And then at the end, we'll talk through some reading plans. The reading, I just want to be clear, I'm not going to be doing a TBR or giving a list of books that I'm planning to pick up in 2025. Rather, I'm going to be going through kind of a blueprint of the general idea of what I'm going to be picking up from month to month. And then as we are actually into the new year, then from time to time I might do more formal TBRs, but just wanted to give that heads up in case you were expecting a TBR here today. Starting with the channel things though, I'm going to go through some ongoing series I plan to continue doing, that some of which will be month to month, and then some of them will be more so quarterly, and then there's one thing to mention that is more random. Obviously, when I pick up certain books, sometimes it sparks an idea and then I want to make a list that I feel like whatever it was within a certain book or series that I really feel was part of what made me fall in love with it. Sometimes I then want to make lists of other stories that include those certain types of things. So as an example, I've done videos before about adult fantasy books that have actual adult characters and just other sorts of things like that. Where are there gaps in fantasy where when a book finally has that, you're like, where can I get more of this? I do find that those tend to be more spontaneous and sparked through a lot of what I end up picking up. So those things are a little bit harder to plan in advance, but there are a few video series that I really have a lot of other ideas for, and that I want to make sure that you have the heads up so you can be on the lookout for them. One of them would be the From Readers series. This one has been so much fun, and this I feel is one of my favorite series on the channel as it incorporates a lot of your input. If you are new, the From Readers series is where I pose some kind of question or prompt. I always have them on my community tab. I think depending on which updated version of YouTube you have. Sometimes it says posts instead of community tab, but that would be the location, and that's where I have the prompts. And the idea is that I'll pose some kind of question related to books, publishing, writing related things, and then all of you can chime in, and then we go through a lot more in depth. This allows for actually getting to see your input on these topics, and also allows us to actually dig deeper into the topics, especially that with just me giving my 2 cents about something, I try as much as possible to look at things from different angles, but incorporating your ideas into the equation, of course, broadens that, and I think it makes it for a much more interesting conversation. I do also have the prompts over on my Patreon, and I do always make an effort to read my patrons' responses as a thank you to them, but you do not have to subscribe to Patreon. I do also, within those videos, go through the community tab responses. And I really love the series, so I'm going to be continuing on with it. I am a little behind right now. There was some personal life stuff that came up. There was a death in the family recently that's kind of put me behind a little bit on certain videos, so I haven't gotten around to those. They do take a lot of time, and I wanted to ensure that I didn't kind of flake and not put in the effort into those like I typically would. So I've postponed a couple of them. One of them would be the 2 fandoms. So if you haven't chimed in on that one, you are welcome to go ahead and give your responses for that. So we're just kind of going through what's the worst fandom you've interacted with, what makes fandoms good or bad, pros and cons. And then the other one would be trends. Those are the most recent ones, and I will be doing videos for both those topics likely very early 2025. I might even double up and do those 2 within January, because I have some ideas for ones I want to do for February that I think would be not only fun, but funny as well. So I will be continuing that video series, but I wanted to give that heads up so that you don't forget, if you are interested in participating, to always be on the lookout for those posts. I also am going to be continuing on with doing new fantasy releases wrap-ups. I hope to do at least one a month. My goal within 2024, as much as possible, was to try to do them once roughly every 3 weeks. I find trying to aim for 2 a month means that I end up having too much of my reading being dedicated to new releases, and it's not balanced out between backlist and then other genres. but I find just once a month makes me feel like I'm not getting around to enough. So I think trying to aim for once every 3 weeks ensures that I have one at least once a month, and then sometimes additional ones as well. I really like doing new fantasy releases, one, because I like checking out new books and seeing what the new trends are, but I really especially want to do these because I know from personal experience, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of you, whether you live in the US like I do or you live elsewhere and it's just expensive to get books delivered to you, I just know how much books can be. And with new releases, when you don't know if it's going to fit your taste, but it sounds good and you're not sure and you want to take a chance, but it's a decent amount of money, I want to ensure that you have some idea of what you're going to get with these new fantasy releases, so that you know if you want to put your money toward them. And I know a lot of people might kind of instinctively and understandably be like, well, people can check things out from the library. But I know not everybody has great access to the library, or maybe you just don't necessarily have the ability to get very much through your library, because some libraries, maybe you have access to the library, but they don't actually have access to a lot of newer releases. Maybe the wait time is really long. So I like doing this series to hopefully keep you up to date and informed on books, and you can determine for yourself if it's something you want to spend your money on. Plus, I like doing anticipated releases videos, and then I like following up on at least some of the books that I mentioned in those anticipated releases. And then this is more of a minor thing, but sometimes I get sent ARCs. So I also try to keep up with the ARCs as well. Anywho, I do think, though, that results in, at the end of the year, when the Goodreads Choice Award nominees happens, I actually feel like I can comment on a lot of the books that are nominated, and I can let you know about them. And I think that does make for kind of a fun end of the year activity that we can participate in. But the Goodreads Choice Awards, Goodreads in general, it has its problems. We did actually do a From Reader series about Goodreads recently. But point is, I like doing new fantasy releases wrap-ups. I'm going to continue to do those. I just mentioned doing anticipated releases videos, and so I'm just going to go ahead and say that I plan to continue doing them month by month so that you have an idea of what's coming out with the upcoming month. I do like to, if I can, aim for something more around the beginning of the month that we're in, so that you know a decent amount in advance what's coming up with the upcoming month. That way, if you want to request something through your library, then you have that option. If you don't know, for those of you who have access to the app Libby, it's a library app, if you look something up and it's not available yet, you can do a deep search, and then it will show you ones that are maybe in the library's catalog but aren't actually available yet, or I'm not sure if I'm wording that correctly, like almost like the system is aware of the book, but it's not actually available just yet, which is why sometimes it doesn't show up among a regular search. So if you do that deep search, then you can click for it to notify you when it does become available. And then as soon as it becomes available, you can put your hold on it. And that helps ensure that if there's something that maybe wasn't as well known, if I get the anticipated releases video out early enough, then you might be closer to first in line when it does come out. That's why I like doing them more so toward the beginning of months. But regardless, I plan to keep doing anticipated releases. They will continue to mostly be focused on fantasy, young adult and adult fantasy. Occasionally there might be fantasy romance, because those tend to kind of be mixed in, and also because sometimes publishers don't categorize them as fantasy romance. But point is, it is going to be fantasy. And then the last thing I want to note for monthly videos, I will say for the new fantasy releases, I did this within 2024, and I'm going to do this within 2025 as well. For any new fantasy books that came out in 2024, in the first quarter of 2025, I'm going to allow those to be included within new fantasy releases wrap-ups, because obviously at the very beginning of the year, January and February, the books aren't out yet, so sometimes I don't have as many things to choose from, and two, I do get a lot of stuff from the library, and sometimes it's not in at the library just yet, or other people have checked it out. And so by having the ability to pick up stuff from 2024, and plus 2024 releases in 2025 are still new, so I can kind of I can make the pool a little bit bigger and then pick from those. But then once we are in the second quarter, then it's only going to be things released in 2025. Anyway, now getting to things within still channel updates, or just keeping you in the loop about channel things that are more quarterly. So I want, if I can, to make the A Fantasy Fan Reads videos at least once a quarter. I've done one thus far, and I did it first with fantasy romance. The next one's going to be steampunk, which I'm really excited about. And then I think I might try to do a quick one for just contemporary romances within the month of February. I think that would be fun. And then we'll do another vote, and sometime in the summer we'll do something a little bit different. But I want to make sure that you still get to vote on them, so I can't predict what it's going to be. But I'm thinking I'll do those too. If I do end up doing an extra one for the month of February, I'll have a post and ask you for your suggestions and everything. I do have a fair amount, just from having a book of the month account. I do have a fair amount of contemporary romances that I kind of want to try. So I do want to at least have the option of you being able to give your input, and then also maybe some patrons can participate and let me know what their picks would be, and we can vote over there also. We'll see. But I do want to do more of these videos. And then also I plan to continue doing my unhauls, DNFs, and library saves. I try to combine these, as I don't always have that many DNFs within a quarter. I don't always have that many unhauling books and unhauls. And then I do like to talk about how much money I save through the library. Not just because some libraries, when you go to check something out, it'll be like, this is how much you didn't spend by checking it out. Not so much that necessarily. More so if I pick something up through the library and I thought it was okay, but maybe I don't want to purchase it, then I count that as money saved. And usually I'll base the money off of my local bookstores as opposed to wherever the library gets their guests from. I'm not really sure, but I prefer to look through local bookstores, as if I am going to purchase something, it's usually from there. Thus, that's where I like to get my estimate from. And also audiobooks, because I do listen to a lot of audiobooks through the library. Those are often credits saved. So I like to kind of incorporate that. Hypes up the library. It also shows just how much you can save through the library, and also how much I'm saving by using the library, because I love books, but books are expensive. Anyway, I also want to continue doing my top fives. So at the end of quarters, I like to go through my top 5 books, and then separately my top 5 new fantasy releases. I didn't do them at the end of every quarter in 2024 because there were times where I just really didn't feel like I had a top 5. I'm hoping that 2025 that will not be the case, and that I will always have things to gush about at the end of every quarter. And if I do, I'll continue making those. If I don't, I'll delay it, and then I'll make them sometime around the end of the quarter after. And then we have self-published wrap-ups. A goal of mine this year is to read roughly 1 self-pub book every month, and then at the end of every quarter, highlight the 3 books that I've picked up. A little hiccup with this plan that I'm running into is that some of the self-pub series I've been picking up are series, and I want to keep going with them, but I feel kind of bad at whenever I do a self-published wrap-up, having 1 or even 2 of the things I'm talking about be series I already talked about in the last one, but maybe in the last one I read the first books in those series, and now I'm talking about the second books in those series. I don't feel it then allows for other self-pub works to shine. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how to navigate that. I might just up the amount of self-published books I pick up, or maybe if I'm far enough into a series, I won't mention those in the self-pub wrap-ups anymore, and I'll just talk about the ones that are ones I haven't yet discussed with all of you. And then the ones that I am further along in, I can just talk about in some kind of regular wrap-up video. Still trying to figure out if you have suggestions for how you would prefer, if you want the sequels within series to still be within the self-pub wrap-ups, let me know. Or if you feel like maybe if it's a sequel, then I can include it in the self-pub wrap-up, but then bump it from 3 books to 4 books or something. Let me know what your suggestions are, and I'll try to take that feedback into consideration so that they're as helpful and informative as possible. I don't know that I'll always do these, but I also might try... Sorry, something is stuck in my throat, so it sounds like I'm really emotional right now, like I'm about to cry, but that's not the situation whatsoever, so apologies. I'm just gonna try to push through it. So I might still, from time to time, do seasonal recommendations videos. So, for example, this is obvious, but like when the fall season comes around, fall recommendations, those sorts of things, I find those are helpful for fall. I don't know if everybody's particularly interested in spring or summer or winter, but I like doing seasonal recommendations. I might do them here and there, I might not, but if I do them, they are seasonal, which means they're quarterly. And then if I have any TBRs that I've really settled on, I'm considering doing these. They might just be like an every other month thing, or they might be if I'm going to be doing some kind of read along or something. And if you want to participate, I want to obviously ensure that I get the heads up available to all of you. But they're not necessarily things that I'm for sure going to do. They might just pop up here and there. And then the last one, I wouldn't mind knowing your thoughts on this topic. I'm playing around with the idea of having a new video series, which would be a trend deep dive. And so if I were to do this, like as an example, I have one set up where I want to kind of start with where the trend used to be, what it's turned into, which authors really helped facilitate the growth of those and popularized them. How often do we still see this now? And on top of that, what authors might be able to have a fresh new take on those tropes. That's the idea. And I think it'd be a lot of fun, but I also don't know if it sounds fun to anyone else. So let me know. If you do think it sounds fun, feel free to mention trends or tropes that you think this would be a fun series for me to have your suggestions put within, and I'll see about doing those. I might try a few, and if I enjoyed, that's part of it. If I really have fun doing it, then I'll do it. And if it doesn't get a lot of views, then oh well, I still think it'd be fun. But if it's something that all of you are like, this is so cool, then I maybe would turn it into something similar to From Readers, where then maybe I can incorporate your thoughts on it. I don't know. I don't want it to be too much like I'm asking you to do the work for me for those videos. The point would be for me to do a deep dive into them and then provide that as a form of entertainment and as kind of a jumping off point for a conversation starter. Anyway, it's just an idea. I've had one of them ready to go for so long, and it's in my notes. And I'm always like, sometimes I wait for certain times of the year, and I'm like, no, I don't know. And I just bounce back and forth, so we'll see. And then one other thing that doesn't really fit into monthly, and it doesn't necessarily fit into quarterly, I just wrote wrap-ups and reviews. So reviews are going to happen when I feel that I have something more in-depth to say about a book. That's a given. That's persisted throughout pretty much the entirety of me making videos about books. And with wrap-ups, because I do new fantasy releases wrap-ups and because I do self-pub wrap-ups, I find that if I were to do a wrap-up consistently at the end of each month, I feel they would be too repetitive because I would be talking about so many things I've already done dedicated videos for, especially if I also do reviews. But if I do from time to time pick up a fair amount of backlist fantasy, maybe I read a nonfiction book, maybe I decided for a month to also pick up a thriller or something like that, then I'm thinking maybe like every 5 backlist books or every 5 non-new fantasy releases books, I'll do a wrap-up. Not sure exactly, but I will likely do wrap-ups from time to time. They're likely just not going to be quarterly or monthly. They're more likely to be quarterly than monthly, though, if I do fairly consistently do wrap-ups, but if they're more sporadic, then they're more sporadic. I just want to make sure the books that I read actually get talked about. That's more so the thing, but I just don't want to talk about the same ones over and over again. I try to avoid that where I can. Some quick updates now about some writing things. I have contacted the audiobook service that I used for my first book, and I have a general idea of maybe when we might be able to get started for an audiobook for the second book, and the hope is that if not at least the first half of 2025, maybe the first third, there can be an audiobook. There is currently no physical book yet out at the time I'm recording this for book 2, nor is there the ebook or digital, but I'm thinking that it will also be released some time around when I'm hoping to have the audiobook out for the second one. The reason that it has taken so long, even though I finished writing the second book in 2023, part of why it's taken so long is because I'm sure a lot of you know this, but when you self-publish a book, if you want to get it professionally edited, if you want to get it formatted, if you want to ensure that the book is going to look nice within print and within digital, then you do have to bring some other people into the equation. And then you kind of have to meet them where they are with their schedule. And so some of it's a little bit outside of my schedule. And I'm kind of laughing because it stresses me out. Because I, as much as possible, like I like when I'm in charge of things involving my work, and when I have to kind of relinquish control over to other people, it makes me a little anxious. However, that's just the way it is when you have to have other people that have expertise that you do not have as a part of the team. And so some of the scheduling is a result of other people's schedules, but we're getting there. We're really close. And I'm very excited. But the good news is, as a result of this, the audiobook for book 2 and the actual release of the print and the digital should come out roughly around the same time, which is pretty exciting. On the topic of audiobooks, I mentioned in the last update I did that the audiobook for the first one is available, so you can check it out if you'd like. But I am going to try to make it available through other sites. If you do want more information about that specifically, I'll link my previous update video so you can kind of hear a little bit more of the in-depth that is involved with the audiobook. But then also some other things that are not going to come to fruition by any means within 2025, but just a few things that I want sort of to vocalize to help kind of encourage me and push me would be that I have already started book 3 of the series. The series is called The Dark Shores. The first book is Peace and Turmoil. The second book is Remnants of Dawn. The third book's title will be Colors of Chaos. I'm very excited, but I have started the third book. I want to keep going with it. I'm not going to put too strong of an emphasis on word count or I have to get the first draft done or anything like that. I'm going to kind of play it by ear, but I'm going to be very vague and just saying that I want to continue for now. And then I also want to officially start. I've kind of started it here and there through different writing exercises and things like that. There is another book series that I want to write, and I mentioned it barely here and there. In the past, I would have described it as Final Fantasy meets Parks and Recreation. That's not quite accurate in that, one, neither of those things are books, but two, it's a lot, I would say, harsher than Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec is like silly in a lot of ways, and it's very poignant and funny, but I would say it doesn't really lean as heavy into the bleakness. So I think perhaps a better way to categorize it would be Final Fantasy meets Joe Abercrombie, which sounds like two things that wouldn't go together whatsoever, but that is the best way I can describe this other fantasy series that I want to work on. I will likely bounce around between them because I think that might be a good exercise for me, and also if I'm feeling a little like I need to breathe between, some of the character work, or if I feel like pacing, I need to work something out with one, I can go to the other. But those are the writing goals for myself currently for the start of 2025. And then now into reading things. Some of this is going to be similar to things I talked about with channel related things, but I want to have specifically a layout of 18 books to pick up within every quarter. That's obviously, if we do the math, 6 books for each month. And the way I want to do it is I plan to read more than 6 books a month. But there's a breakdown of what I want to ensure I get to. And so the way I've broken it down is 3 of the books are going to be related to Patreon in some fashion. Either it'll be, my patrons often have buddy reads. Either they're reading through a series or they have a standalone that they're going to pick up. And then also I have a little cup with some of their favorite books, my patrons' favorite books, and then I draw from that cup. And then I try to read those books as well. And when I can, I try to do patron vlogs or patron spoiler discussions for certain books. So I want to ensure that I do one of those about once a month for sure. So I have at least 3 books that are patron related. Then I have at least 9 that are new fantasy. That's 3 a month. That's in line with me doing at least one new fantasy releases wrap up every month, so that's not too out there. Then I have the 3 self-published books that I want to pick up within each quarter. If I can do more, great. If I sometimes have one of the 3 be a sequel to a series like I talked about earlier, that's fine too. And then what was I trying to tell myself? I abbreviated like new fantasy I put NF, and then self-pub I put SP. And I am totally blanking on what the heck LO stands for. Oh my gosh, what was I trying to tell myself? This is what happens when you abbreviate and you take a lot of notes. I'm sure it'll come to me. I'm spacing right now. I figured out what LO meant for the first quarter. LO stands for leftovers. So books that I planned to read at the end of 2024 that I didn't get around to. I wanted to have at least 3 slots for those books. That's what it meant. That is all. On that really dumb note, that's it for some plans for channel and writing and reading related things. So if you, as I asked for a lot of things, if you wanted to give your input, feel free. So if you want to do that, feel free. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks as always for all of your support. Let's hope 2025 is going to be a survivable year. And I'll see all you later. Bye.